This week, there was a post about lies men are told about women, and one of the comments said that women do not care about men's feelings. I am a woman, but that aside, who in your life do you open up to 100%? Dad, brother, friend? I did not expect to get this many responses, but I am really happy that it got a large discussion going. I think this topic is very important and extremely undervalued by our society. I am young and naive, but thanks to your answers, I feel I understand a man's world a bit better now. As a woman who genuinely cares about men's mental health and would love for my partner or male friends to be able to lean on me, this discussion has shown me that I belong in a small minority. Most women do not want to see men as fallible humans with vulnerable emotions. This angers me as much as it saddens me, and I see now that this is a huge problem within interpersonal relationships. We as women need to do better in this department. Now I ask myself the question, where do men get their strength from? Story 1. Groovy offer distinct numerous sloppy screw profit frightening nippy abounding. This post was mass deleted and anonymized with redact. Story 2. No one. My dad was that person. I learned quickly after he passed that it would be no one from then on, and that added to the grief and stress I felt at the time. Story 3. 99% of the time, no one. I'm my own therapist, so to speak. Granted, my problems aren't severe. If I absolutely feel like I have to talk to someone just to share my pains, I'll talk to my best guy friends, and maybe my wife, depending on how much of a grasp I have on my problem. Story 4. No one. I tell my wife about 40%. I learned that I'm here for her to lean on, not the opposite. She had told me once that I need to be there to hold and support her, literally and figuratively, when she's having a tough time, even if she's being difficult, because that's my role as a husband. So, the next time she had a really rough patch and she was indeed difficult to not only me but everyone else as well, I held her, comforted her, and tended to her needs. 3 days later, I get slightly depressed, just kind of mopey and a bit listless. She tells me, "Are you going to be like this all day? Because if you are, I don't want to be around you." That told me everything I needed to know about my feelings and my position. Story 5. The man in the mirror and my therapist. Other than that, I don't trust people enough to 1. Understand my struggles. Keep it confidential and not use it against me in some way. Care. You have to understand that exposure can cost you literally everything, even your life. Life is not easy for many. Don't learn the hard way. Story 6. Nobody. I'm 37. My immediate family is deceased. I traveled across the country to reunite with my brother about a year before he passed. His wife and child moved back to Germany. For context, she has family there, and he passed around 4 months ago. It is good for them. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm complaining. He met her in Germany, and it's the best move for my niece, just not for me. I am alone. Totally alone. Have a good day. Story 7. Honestly, Reddit. I tell my wife everything is well, but since she is 7 months along with twins, some things stress her out. So I'll share them here just to vent. I listen a lot to people who need help and offer advice. I'm generally my collective group's sounding board most of the time, but like all therapists, I need a sounding board too, and Reddit seems to be the most reliable for brutal reality. Story 8. Crisis Intervention Guide, Counselor and First Responder here. The state of men's mental health is truly concerning. There is an epidemic of loneliness and an overall effort to reduce toxic masculinity that has reached way too deeply into many men. Story 9. I have sincerely nobody. I live alone in a country far away. All I have is my parents. But my mom has dementia, and my dad takes care of her. So, I don't suddenly call them and say I feel depressed. They will be totally devastated hearing that, especially my dad when my mom says suicidal things to him, but she really doesn't mean it. Their happiness is important to me too. Story 10. Some men got burned here and have no support systems. Some have support systems, some have a combination of both, or some have nothing. A lot of men don't open up at all. In short, a lot of men refuse to open up at all. Story 11. I get called whiny or overly emotional because I just say how I feel when I'm feeling it. I held things in for too long and ended up self-medicating and in a horrible drug addiction for 6 years. I feel better when I get things off my chest, so I do. I'm not good at holding emotions in. Story 12. I did it once. Never again. I've become able to deal with my own problems because it has been this way since forever. So it was man up or man up. I have people I can rely on if things go extremely wrong, but unless it gets to that point, I won't ask anyone for help. Story 13. No one, because we were taught that opening up about feelings is for women. Men are machines and only worth what we make. That is the only condition when we are acknowledged. Other than that, we're just dogs. Story 14. The only woman in my life that has never judged, weaponized, or publicly shared my intimate information never shaves, has horrible breath, for legs, and a tail. Story 15. My friends and I have fostered a group dynamic where we can turn to each other and be vulnerable, really lean on each other. I have several friends I can call on and tell them I need them, and they'll be there. I had a hard breakup in my mid-20s. I called my brother, told him I needed him, he came over, and I cried to him for hours. This idea that we can't be vulnerable with each other is something that you have to break down yourself. Tell your close friends you love them, make female friends that are only friends, get a therapist, talk to your parents, and do all of these things until people stop feeling uncomfortable about it. My dad wouldn't even tell me he loved me. It took me a year of telling him I loved him at 19 years old before he'd comfortably say it back. Stop buying into this rubbish and make the men and people around you be more comfortable with their feelings. Story 16. No one. Never. I've made the mistake of sharing too much with people I thought I could safely confide in too many times before, and in my case at least, it was mostly women in my life who betrayed my trust like that, though plenty of men did the same. I've never had someone other than myself that I could share emotional or mental issues with completely. But I've had my trust weaponized more times than I can possibly count ever since I was a little kid. If I didn't know better by now, then that would make me the fool, and so shame on me for it. Story 17. No one. Tried confiding in my wife. She effectively told me to be a man and not a child. No one else wouldn't trust to confide in. Basically, it's keep it all inside until I can't stand it and then spend thousands on therapy. Story 18. The best statement on this was stated by the Banana King. Yeah, you think you can handle it, but honestly, you probably can't. In my experience, and in the experience of a whole lot of men, you very likely aren't prepared to see your husband ugly cry, curl up in the fetal position and shake, express feelings of helplessness and worthlessness, or otherwise let it all out. Men generally aren't permitted outlets for vulnerability or negative emotions in our society. They're valued for what they can do, and since vulnerability is seen as unreliability, demonstrating it completely destroys their worth in the eyes of everyone around them. Inside Out is only true for girls. If boys break down crying, they get shamed, spat on, and ostracized, and that's only by their own family. Most of us have made the mistake once of letting the mask slip and showing the person closest to us what it's really like in there. And we've seen the love and admiration in their eyes turn to contempt and disgust. And that never really comes back, certainly not all the way. It's like seeing them learn that the house they just bought has termites and is of dubious structural soundness. Yea, it's their home, but, and there will always be a but. And you can patch it up, make repairs, but what they wanted was a symbol of strength and safety and a reliable shelter that would always hold them up. And it will never quite be that ever again. That sense of betrayal that they put their trust in what turned out to be a lemon, that never goes away. Not at the subliminal, emotional level that defines what things really mean to you. My strongest advice to you is not to look. You can know intellectually, that's fine, but don't force him to show you. You think you're above all the gender role programming that's been pushed on everyone for millennia, and of course you want to be, but chances are you're just not enough. Even worse, partners feeling excluded and rejected when we don't open up can push and finally force us to create a second mask, to simulate being just a little bit sad. Occasionally letting out one single manly tear like gray worm. This is, of course, twice as much work and stress to maintain, on top of all the stress that's causing you to ask in the first place. Very likely, the best thing you can do for your husband is not to refer to signs of not okayness leaking out. Act oblivious, or at least give him plausible deniability. And also with plausible deniability, offer up some unspoken comfort and support. Little tokens of affection and appreciation that say, I've got your back, without actually saying you know he needs it. All of this is really hard, and none of it is your fault. Of course, you want to help the person you love. Of course, you know you'll be there for them. But the pressures we are raised with are often a lot stronger than we like to acknowledge. And isn't that a kick in the teeth? And the very best thing you can do for the wider problem underlying it is to lessen the pressures that your child will be raised with. Be loud about it being okay for boys to be vulnerable. Use your incoming mama bear powers to eviscerate and maul anyone trying to gender police people, and let your kids see you do it. Teach that it's not a boy's job to be a stoic protector every day, and that it's not a girl's job to be a fragile flower that needs that protection. Everyone needs healthy coping skills to handle moderate amounts of stress without cracking, and the option to be vulnerable and ask for help when they need it, regardless of their personal circumstances. Be part of the change you want to see, and pay it forward to the next generation. Story 19. Know one person. I have 3 close friends that I feel I can open up to, and I share things with them. There's no one person with whom I would share everything, but each of those 3 covers everything serious that I'd need to talk about. I have a secondary social circle for less urgent or serious topics. Story 20. I open up solely in online communities. In my experience, women care but can't really help. Men can provide a distraction or help in other ways but don't seem to care. Story 21. Nobody. Men are expected to handle their own issues as well as everyone else's. If we were to confide that we were having troubles, then we wouldn't be managing our role very well, would we? Story 22. I'm a single dad in my 60s. My own parents died years ago. My kids are teens. I have no confidence, but it's been this way for a long time, probably about 40 years. Story 23. It used to be my partners, but all that did was make them think less of me and move on to other guys that are better at hiding it. So now I keep it internal. Story 24. I don't. If there is an immediate issue or something I need input on before a decision, I might ask a very close friend or parents if it has to do with work or similar, but otherwise there is no point. If I can't solve it, I'll just live with it, and then there is no point in talking to anyone about it. It is what it is. Story 25. Nobody. Everyone gets something. No one gets everything. Even with my current wife, I opened up just a little bit about something that I was feeling vulnerable about, and it was thrown in my face that same day. At this point, it's cheaper to keep her, but I'll die with no one knowing who I really am. Story 26. There are over 1,000 comments in this thread, but I hope someone will read it. For years ago, I met someone who became my very best friend. She is like a sister to me, and she is a person that I trust completely. I was a more private or even secretive person. I didn't share fully with anyone because I thought nobody cared. I also had really low self-confidence and thought nobody wanted to hear not only about my problems but also about my hobbies, like comic books, fantasy, and science fiction. She was the first person in a long time who actually tried to get to know me better, asking questions about my favorite books or superheroes. I talked with her about the current Batman series and why I thought it was bad. It was Tom King's series. We also clicked because we have the same sense of humor. I remember one time we talked about friendship, and she told me, friends are for each other not only for good things, but for bad things too. She taught me that it is all right to have problems or be weak sometimes. After that, I became more open about my struggles. She also encouraged me to always want more out of life. She was actively pushing me to quit my dead-end job and do something else with my life. And I did that. After I got my current job, she was the first person I called. She also told me about her struggles and problems. We were helping each other and being each other's emotional support. I remember one evening when we talked about our families and how unimportant we felt in our families. We were both emotional and we cried for a little while. After that evening, I was a mess. I got scared that she would leave me or call me weak or pathetic. But she never did any of that. She treated me the same as always. She accepts me completely, and she probably knows me better than anyone. She also helped me to get back into the dating game. Thanks to her, I became more open with other people too, and my bonds with people I had known for 10 years became deeper. Thanks to that, I understood one thing: people care about you. You just need to let them in. If they can't handle the bad things, they were never your friends. Story 27. Who do you confide in completely? No one. I would like to say my only current friend, my first girlfriend, who has been in my life since I was 9, but I didn't tell her anything when I decided to move away. I haven't told her about being diagnosed with autism, and that was 4 years ago. I told my mom earlier this year and deeply regret it. I don't think she even knows I'm currently unemployed. She knows I quit my job, but she might think I'm still working. She doesn't know why I decided to cut off my other friends. There's just a lot she doesn't know for me to say that I confide in her completely. But even though I do not tell her everything, I know that if I ever did, she would stay. She wouldn't leave or say that it is too much. Maybe that's why I don't. Why bother her with that stuff anyways? After all, I'm fine always. Story 28. No one. I do not confide 100% in anyone really anymore. I have friends I do not want to burden with my sadness, and my therapist I do not want getting too concerned when it is really bad. I used to have someone to confide 100% in, but she left. Story 29. As a woman, I deeply care about the men in my life and their feelings. The 2 suicides in my family were both men. I wish they spoke up. I wish they were still here. Your feelings always matter to someone, even if it's just one person. And look, I work as a sports and rehabilitation massage therapist, and my clients, even the men, open up to me and talk about what's on their mind. I listen and I care. Someone cares. Story 30. No one. I tried to open up once to her and she got angry at me. I even went to therapy for a while. I could tell he didn't care. The only thing he wanted to do was put me on medication. It is now a dark sense of humor and bottle it back up.